Inner Goldilocks, how to get it just right. Thank you so much for joining us for another hour of insightful and meaningful conversation. We love spending time together and building this Goldilocks community because it gives us the opportunity to think about what are we doing here? Why are we doing it? And how do we do it better together? And how can we support each other and build shared prosperity? Why is that important? To me, Goldilocks symbolizes balance. Even as a young girl, she knew exactly what she wanted and how to make sure she got it just right. She made sure her porridge was neither too hot nor too cold. She made sure her bed was neither too hard nor too soft. Imagine if we took a page from Goldilocks. We used to be that young child, right? We knew exactly how to wrap adults around our little finger and influence them to do exactly what we wanted when we wanted. Somewhere along the way, we have forgotten the ability to influence, and we have staked the position that I need to get exactly what I want when I want without understanding how to influence one another. But Goldilocks teaches us how to find that centeredness, how to find that balance, and truly recapture and reclaim our power of influence. How can we do that? Research shows that we can each influence only three levels from where we are. So imagine if I am at the extreme right end of a particular issue or situation. Since I'm already the extreme right end, I can only influence three levels towards the center. If I'm at the extreme left end of a situation or an issue, I can only influence three levels towards the center as well, towards the center being the operative word, because when we stake extreme positions, whether we like it or not, we become extremists. And that is partly what's wrong with the world. We don't need to be extreme. What if we looked at a situation from everybody's perspective, not just me, everybody's perspective, and utilized that perspective taking to be centered? Now I can come from a place of understanding how a particular situation affects everybody. The best example I can give, I've been in executive finance roles for more than 25 years. And most men in senior management roles around the world are men. How many of us stop to think most men are colorblind? And they can't tell the difference between reds and greens. And we're creating these charts with traffic lights and reds and greens, and then we wonder why they're not making the decisions based on the reports we gave them. We didn't stop to think that we women sit and do all the analysis and create all the pretty charts, and then we give it to the men to make decisions, right? Normally, unfortunately, that's how the world is set up today. But we forget that they can't see the nuances of colors. So what if we truly not only use the color, but put designs on it? So the reds have stripes, the greens have dots. So create visuals in a way that you're creating perspective for different folks. Now, all of a sudden, folks who can see color and folks who cannot see color can all look at the same information, and they can take perspective based on what is relevant to them, but we're sharing information in a meaningful way. We're coming at resolving an issue or a problem in a more inclusive way. To me, that is a living example of how we can become centered. And all of a sudden, when we become centered and we understand how this affects other people and how I can connect with them and make my communication impactful and resonate for them so that they can take meaningful action, all of a sudden I have re-embraced my power of influence, and therefore I can accomplish my goals. So my very success is predicated on my ability to influence, and therefore becoming centered and finding that balance becomes critical. And in that process, it's inevitable that we will share prosperity, because I am taking into consideration what works for you, what works for the second person, what works for the third person. And we truly are creating an inclusive environment where everybody has a sense of belonging and everybody feels like they're a part of it. And that truly is our way out of the situation we've cornered ourselves into. Our success is fundamentally predicated on making sure that we live our purpose. Living our purpose allows us to take what we love, integrate it with what we are great at, and go to market in a way that we serve the world based on what they need. So the intersection of what I love, what I'm great at, and what the world needs, in that balance sits my purpose. Think about that for a moment. My purpose sits in the centeredness of three elements. Therefore, if I'm always wondering, I'm not happy with what I'm doing, I don't know where my life is going, I don't know what to do, and I'm frustrated, think about, where do you find your own balance? Take that journey within yourself and find that balance to find your purpose. Because until you find your inner balance, you're never going to find your inner purpose. And until you find your inner purpose, you're never going to be truly happy. You may make money, but you're not going to be fulfilled. You're not going to be happy. You're not going to be at peace. And it becomes something you chase as opposed to something you embrace and embody and live. Today's conversation is about business being a force for good. And to jump into that conversation and truly embrace it, I want us to take 3 nuggets of wisdom into the conversation. Business as a force of good is something that I am deeply passionate about, and it is an area in which I have dedicated my life, my research, my life work to, because I honestly believe that business and capitalism was created to build the wealth of individuals and nations. It was supposed to be the antidote, the remedy to colonial economy, where the colonial masters were actually taking away the wealth of nations, and a handful of countries were getting rich while the rest were getting depleted. Capitalism was supposed to reverse that. It was supposed to build the wealth of individuals and the wealth of nations so that each community, each nation can prosper and thrive. So keeping that in mind, 3 nuggets of wisdom I want us to take into the conversation. Number 1, more than anything else, is let your being guide your doing. Authentically embrace who you are. Connect with your being, your very soul, the essence of who you are. And then take that essence and purposefully channel it to what you do. That way you will always remain true and centered. The biggest mistake we make in the modern world today, we define ourselves based on what we do. And then we believe we have to adjust the way we show up based on what I do. John Maxwell talks about how ethics is not situational. You either have it or you don't, right? And I always look at ethics as very much like being pregnant. You're never a little bit pregnant, right? You're either pregnant or you're not. You're either ethical or you're not. It is not something we swipe in or out as we enter buildings and situations and scenarios. So take the first step of connect with your being, get to know you. It's the most important relationship we will each have in our lifetime, the relationship with ourselves. If we don't have that down, we're never going to be able to build a relationship with a significant other, friends, build a community, build a tribe, nothing. Everything starts from within. So please take the opportunity to connect with yourself and purposefully channel our doing. And one of the exercises I recommend everybody to do is stand in front of the mirror every morning and introduce yourself to you without ever saying what you do for a living, but who you actually are. In 1 or 2 or 3 sentences, Learn to introduce yourself as to who you are, because if you say it to yourself over and over again, you will start believing it, and your belief becomes your destiny, and your belief then informs and guides all you're doing. The second nugget of wisdom I want us to take into the conversation is your humanity is the secret sauce. There is no other bigger secret. Kindness, compassion, and empathy are not incongruent to success. They are the underpinning of success. You may ask why. It's business, it's not personal. Who are you doing business with? Who are we doing business with? Martians are not coming. Nobody else is coming. All our stakeholders, our suppliers, our customers, our employees, everybody is human. What is the one thing all creatures, not just humans, what is the one thing every living creature responds to, including plants, by the way? That humanity, right? Listening to music and talking to plants make them flower and fruit much better. If a plant is that vibrant when there is kindness and compassion and empathy, can you imagine the kind of teams and human beings we can develop if we brought our humanity forward? It doesn't matter how great I am at everything I need to do, but there's still only 24 hours in a day, and I am merely human. Therefore, I need to embrace and I need to develop others. And the only way to do that by influencing them is to show up in our humanity. You don't have to be a genius to be successful. You just have to be human. And that means understanding that we're all fallible, understanding that we are also learning and growing. And it's okay if we're not perfect, as long as we accept that nobody else is either. The third nugget of wisdom I want us to take into the conversation is let your goodness become contagious. You know, all the bad things spread like wildfire and just as bad as COVID. But what if we took a step back and made the goodness become more contagious than everything that is toxic? Let your soul enkindle another. There is light in each of our souls. Take that light, and through our humanity, let's pass it on. Show up in a way that you are a reflection of your being. And the way you show up, you have the opportunity to light another, spark another. And every person you spark is a person you're influencing. And therefore, you become the conduit for building that shared prosperity. If you want to read and hear more about these nuggets of wisdom, I recommend you pick up my book, Ennobling for Success, from Civil War to US CFO. And if you truly want to practice these wisdoms, I recommend that you buy the gratitude journal that accompanies the book, because it takes you through 52 weeks of how you can truly develop the skills and capabilities to embrace this. Because believe it or not, this is going to lay the foundation for your own success. And I am extremely excited to have Robin Johnson today. Welcome, Robin.
Hello, it is good to be here again. I was on your show in February of last year after having somewhat recently graduated with my master's in applied positive psychology and talking about resilient organizations as we were just beginning to come out of the pandemic. And so it's great to be on your show again. Thank you for inviting me. It's always very inspiring.
Thank you, Robin. It's always a joy. And for our regular audience, you know Robin is part of our Goldilocks community, and she's an active contributing live audience member. So this is extremely special because she's a personal friend, she's a colleague, and we are two women who truly look up to each other, who embrace each other, and we try and work at embodying our own way of building shared prosperity. So thank you. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. And let me give you a brief intro to Robin, and then she is going to talk a little bit more about it. As a resilience and wellbeing advisor, she's passionate about teaching and inspiring organizations to become more humane, ethical, and resilient. She has taught organizational resilience and leadership skills to numerous professional organizations and believes that businesses can be and should be a force for good in the world. She's a leader of various nonprofit organizations and have used science of well-being to help them become more humane, ethical, and resilient. She teaches individuals to build inner resilience and to discover and develop personal character strengths, creating a life of thriving, not just surviving. She has taught principles and practices of well-being to patrons of YWCA, various church groups, and individuals, and has seen the power of those concepts and skills transform lives for the better. She has 3 amazing daughters and son-in-law and 2 delightful granddaughters, and is proudly grateful for their love and support. Robin, thank you for joining us from the United States. Good to see you.
Great. Thank you so much. And I'm going to give a little quick shout out to Cass. If any of you have not read her book, she is just amazing. As she mentioned, having grown up in Sri Lanka during the Civil War and then come to the United States as a teenager. I met her when she was a CF many, many years ago, when she was the CFO of the Chicago Teachers Pension Fund. She later headed up the transition team for Berkshire Hathaway when they bought Duracell. And now she's in Belize helping that government turn things around. So Cass embodies everything that she talks about. And it's really, really great to be here.
Thank you so much, Robin. That is so sweet of you to, say something nice. I appreciate that. And so this is truly a demonstration of how we lift each other up. And the beautiful thing about having this conversation where business as a force for good is that, Robin, you and I truly have built our lives, built our relationship, our collaborative partnership on making sure that we not only embody this, we take it to the professional world and the society around us. So share with us what brought you to a point of wanting to talk about this on the show and why the timing is perfect given where we are as a society.
Well, I am absolutely passionate about helping organizations, as it said in the intro there, be more humane, ethical, and resilient. One of my favorite lines, I have 2 favorite lines from movies, and one is from It's a Wonderful Life, where George Bailey is confronting Mr. Potter. And Mr. Potter has been talking about the rabble. And George Bailey says, this rabble you're talking about, they do most of the working and paying and living and dying in this community. Well, is it too much to have them work and pay and live and die in a couple of decent rooms and a bath? And I take that thing as an analogy, and I say that we adults spend most of our lives at work. So is it too much to have workplaces that are humane, that are ethical, that are resilient? I don't think that it is. I know that you don't think that it is. My wonderful sister Christine Fales is on the line here. I'm really grateful for her. And she and her husband David have a fabulous company, a small family-owned company in Wyoming, and they embody these principles as well. In fact, David and I spoke about organizational resilience to a major finance organization's annual conference just last November. So I'm very passionate about taking the principles that help organizations be more humane, ethical, and resilient, and then you can see how this impacts their bottom line, positively impacts their bottom line. And in fact, if they are not those things, their bottom line will be negatively impacted.
Mm-hmm. And very much so. We are living at a time where COVID has reminded people that work is not everything, because life, without life, there is nothing. And people have had a reset, and which is resulting in the Great Resignation, where people are leaving the workforce in droves to go and pursue other things. Because one of the realizations people have had is if I had a place to live and I can grow my own food and I can trade for the things that I don't have with people who don't have access to food, we're going to be okay. We don't need the money. And so we are going back to what is the meaning of life and how is this going to impact me and how is it going to give me a quality of life? Because what's the point in running like hamsters all day to work and then get sick and not have a family, get divorced, because we don't have time for anything else. So at a time like this, where everybody is rethinking, where is a good place, you believe, Robin, for organizations and individuals to start thinking about how do I find my inner humanity? How do I show up in our humanity so that I can be the catalyst for the chain reaction to happen? Because every person has to show up willing to be the catalyst.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fabulous question. And I like to focus on the principle for organizational change. I like to focus on the principles of creating meaning, creating a sense of belonging, and establishing genuine collaboration. And it's interesting that you bring up the Great Resignation, which is still in full swing. People thought the Great Resignation would be over by now. And if you haven't heard that term, what is exactly what Cass said, because of COVID, people are really reevaluating their lives and they're changing jobs. Maybe not necessarily, some are leaving the workforce altogether, but many of them, they're just simply changing jobs, trying to find organizations that are functioning better, that are more humane, ethical, and resilient. And it's interesting that one of the drivers of whether someone will stay with an organization, whether they are engaged or not, is a sense of belonging. And do they feel like they belong to the organization? They feel like they're part of a team that cares about them. And one of the drivers of belonging is, are they working for an organization that has meaning? Are they working for an organization that is doing good in the world? Now, it's interesting that you don't have to belong to the Red Cross or a nonprofit in order to find meaning. One of the most powerful examples I learned about not that long ago was Clark Industries. They're a family-owned, 4 generations have owned this company. And at the surface, they're a pest control. You know, we kill mosquitoes. Well, they looked at themselves and said, is that who we want to be? We kill mosquitoes? That's all who we are? And they looked deep and looked at who they really are, having survived for 4 generations. And they said, no, we help communities be more livable, be more safe, and be stronger. They have a whole, like a little sentence, I don't have it memorized, but basically they look at helping communities be better and families be better. And a couple of things they did, they said, we need to reduce our footprint, our environmental footprint. And so they began finding ways to have pest control without a lot of harsh chemicals. They had a job position that they had a horrible time filling because it was very boring. There's someone driving around in a car, checking on meters here and there. And they said, why don't we have them ride bicycles? And so when there's good weather, then they ride bicycles around. Well, they have a waiting list for this position now, and it has almost completely eliminated their environmental footprint. And then in addition, they developed special nets that keep out. I'm not exactly sure the process, but they keep out and they eliminate the type of mosquito that causes elephantitis, especially in children. And they sent these nets to different villages. And in Rwanda, there's been 3 villages that has completely eliminated elephantitis in the village because of these nets. And so here's a company, and they're surviving, they're thriving. And so they are doing well by doing good. And that's the thing to get across is that companies that do good in the world can do well.
Absolutely. And that is something most people forget. To do well, we don't have to destroy others, right? There is somehow this notion that if I snuff the light out of other people, somehow I am going to shine brighter. No, if I enhance the light and light up other people, then my path lights up and my light is going to be visible for longer, right? So it's flipping that mindset of only I alone, and truly embracing. And I love what you just talked about, where our environmental footprint matters. In business, in international business, in the financial world, we talk about a triple bottom line. The goal of a business is to create wealth, long-term wealth. But we can't create long-term wealth as the financial motive if we don't have a society that is educated, healthy, and thriving to engage in commerce so that we can have employees, customers, suppliers, and all the other stakeholders to come from that community. So the economic prosperity sits at the privilege of societal prosperity. And the societal prosperity cannot happen if the environment is dying.
Exactly.
Because we still need oxygen to breathe. We can't be destroying what sustains us. So the triple bottom line concept of economics and finance talks about the importance of making sure the environment we as human beings function is viable and sustainable within that larger sphere. Then we build societies that are sustainable and functional. And these two create a self-healing ecosystem for then the business to sit and thrive so that the economic and financial prosperity can be had. And I don't know when or where or how that whole concept got lost. And we've gone from the basic fundamental belief that being symbiotic is how we all thrive to I'm going to be like a parasite and I'm going to take. But folks forget when the parasite kills one host, it has to move to the next and the next. And pretty soon, when the hosts are all dead, the parasite is going to die. So how do we help individuals and organizations realize you can't use and throw people and things and society, but you have to embrace and grow together, because that seems to be a foreign concept in modern society.
Yes, it's very true. In fact, I was just at a conference talk in Texas at Texpo, which is a finance treasury management association. I was just speaking about these concepts of, in fact, the title is reversing the Great Resignation through meaning, belonging, and collaboration. And one of my colleagues was in the audience, and he leaned over to the woman next to him and was asking, what are you taking away from this? And she said, oh my gosh, these are things I haven't even thought about, in an organization. And so it's definitely time to bring these. There is a movement, a concept spreading more and more throughout the world now, throughout the business world, that instead of looking at your shareholders, that you look at your stakeholders and you get everyone's voice, or you have every category of voice represented in your decision-making process. It's a wonderful process called appreciative inquiry, created by David Cooperrider about, over 30 years ago, I guess close to 35 years ago. It's being used more and more and more. But the notion is that you get the stakeholders involved, not just the people on the upper management committee, but what about your customers? What about your supply chain? Maybe even your competitors. You get as many voices as possible, and then make those changes. And
that truly works because you're expanding the sense of belonging to the whole community. Exactly. And it truly allows us to start re-embracing the concept of triple bottom line, because the business cannot succeed unless the society is flourishing and society feels like they belong with the business and the business belongs with them. So that makes perfect sense once you take a step back and look at it from far. When
Yes.
you're in it and you're being pushed and pulled, it's almost like you don't see the forest for the trees.
Yes, exactly. And the thing that's important to keep in mind is that these principles, I call them the principles and practices of well-being, of organizational well-being as well as individual well-being, is that these aren't just for, easy situations, but these work and have been shown to work in countless very dire, just very extreme situations. And if they will work in extreme situations, they absolutely will work just for the regular business that is kind of doing okay, but wants to move to the next level.
And that's an excellent point you make, Robin. If we take the Enron or the WorldCom scenario, whether we take the international subprime crisis triggered by here in the United States, these principles apply to all of them. And corporate governance is a business continuity requirement. It is part of the regulatory requirement. And I love Sir Adrian Cadbury's definition of corporate governance. It is the balance of establishing the interest of the individual, the organization, and the underlying society. So I envision a three-legged stool. And the stool is usable and sustainable if all three legs are equal in strength and equal in length. So the interest of the individual, interest of the organization, and interest of the society, when they are met, then the triple bottom line automatically gets met and everybody has a sense of belonging and right things happen. But every time we take a crisis, let's take the subprime crisis. People think that organizations caused the subprime crisis, but I would venture to say individuals in organizations who were driven by greed caused the subprime crisis and subverted the interest of the organization and society. That's why organizations went out of business. Organizations got hurt because individuals made very short-sighted, profit-motivated choices. Mm-hmm. Some businesses no longer exist today after the subprime crisis. So it's not the organization is what? It's a building, it's a logo, it's an address, right? It's people who run it. We're quick to say people don't kill people, guns kill people. Okay, fine. Businesses don't do anything to people. People actually make decisions. We go to work and the way we show up, we're affecting lives. What if we stopped thinking about our job as just a job and look at it as I am a human being. This is how this thing I am doing is affecting me and helping me. And how am I touching other lives? And that's where meaning is derived, right? So if I can start thinking of myself as a being, to where we started this conversation, right? I am a being and everybody I serve is a being. How do I come across in a way that we are mutually serving our beingness? And in that process, then it's inevitable to create belonging. It's inevitable that we create purpose and meaning. So these are not separate projects. These are not separate tasks. It is truly a mindset. Mm-hmm. And how do we create that mindset so that we each show up as a being and accept each other as a being? It doesn't matter what we look like. It's almost like birthday gifts, right? Do we look at the outer wrapping and decide which gift is more valuable? No, we don't know that. Sometimes the gift wrapped in just newspaper might be the most valuable. And most of the time, the smallest box is the most valuable.
Yeah.
Right. So the size doesn't matter. Color doesn't matter. Shape doesn't matter. So if we know this about things, what if we take that and apply it to people? And all of a sudden, the being allows us to accomplish all of the other things organically.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it really comes by adopting a mindset that other people have ideas and have something to contribute, and within an organization, that other departments, other teams have something to contribute. And this ties in, then leads into the notion of collaboration. I was just at a conference yesterday sponsored by Comerica, and a couple of things came out, well, many things came out of it, but I was very surprised to hear them say that they collaborate with Bank of America in providing opportunities for that Bank of America collaborated with them on this symposium for women in business. And I thought I was really happily surprised to hear that these two big banks collaborating with each other. But the other one of the presenters talked about that at Procter & Gamble, they were having a problem with one of their products. They just couldn't figure out how to make this product work correctly. And so they went on to an online, they thought it was a chemical problem. And they went on to an online forum, and a physicist was on there, and he said, "Oh, this is your problem. It's not a chemical problem. It's a physics problem." I frankly don't know the whole lot of the difference between chemistry and physics, but at any rate, well, what they suggested solved the problem. Well, what the speaker pointed out was the Procter & Gamble people had not thought to talk to the physicists on their own within Procter & Gamble. They just were in their own little department. Well, if they had collaborated between departments and collaborated across these silos of information, they would have had the information just within their own organization. So that's a really huge thing, is being able to, cross-pollinate or share this information that you have in silos. And you might not even consider that there's some information that you have that would be useful to somebody else in the organization, and vice versa. And then again, it comes to a mindset of how are you viewing humanity? How are you viewing other people and other departments in your organization?
Brilliant example, Robin. Ultimately, if we come from a place of understanding why we are doing what we are doing, we will land on the fact that we are here to serve our intended customer. So when I go in to do business process transformation or business transformation, the Six Sigma lean management in me, we look at it through the voice of the customer. So how is it landing for the customer? And then what does the beginning to end process looks like? And get the entire cross-functional team in from sourcing to delivering. And all of a sudden, when we start mapping out the process and why do you do, what do you do? And it's the first time people are actually talking to one another. It's almost like baking a cake where you don't allow any ingredient to touch each other. Right? It is not possible, but somehow in the business world, we think we can put people to work together, but somehow put artificial partitions and people don't talk to one another. The minute we remove those fake partitions, they realize how much double and triple dipping they're doing and how much of counter programming. What one team is doing to help the customer, the other team is undoing. And so that's what we call waste reduction in a business process. We look at end to end from the voice of the customer and reduce the waste, and then unleash the potential for the business to thrive. And in that process, we are creating a sense of belonging for everybody in that process chain to understand how they are impacting the ultimate customer. And these are tools and methodologies to ultimately deliver the philosophy of belonging and philosophy of making sure that everybody is lined up with that mission, right? The military does this well. Mm-hmm. There is a mission. We're all working towards that mission. And while executing that mission, we all have to regroup and reevaluate and show up in a way that the mission is successful, not my team or me or your team or you. Mm-hmm. So teaching military and helping military come back into the workforce, it's a good place for me to see how the two worlds work So where do you see, Robin, our opportunity to help individuals embrace that so that when they show up for work, sometimes if the leaders are not giving it, the teams can ask for it and the leaders may not realize it's needed and then it will be provided. How do employees ask for it, even if it is not organizationally instilled right now?
Well, I think the first thing is to realize that leadership is not a title or a position. Everybody in an organization is a leader or can be a leader. Leadership is influence. And so you can influence people just within who are sitting beside you or sitting across the way. Leadership is influence. And so the way that we can show up is to have a positive influence on the people around us and to have a positive mindset, a growth mindset. We're looking for what is the good that's happening in our organization. How can we then use that to solve the problems that are coming our way? How can we think of including other voices in the conversation? It's a matter of influence, and by discovering our own individual character strengths, how can we bring those to bear on any situation? How can we make any workplace be a better place to be, a better place to work?
Mm-hmm. And that is such an important point folks forget, right? Mm-hmm. Power based on title is very much the role of a boss. Mm-hmm. But the power of influence is title free. So it's the being that drives the influence, and therefore it's the power of the being.
Yes.
And world-class organizations actually make it a point to lead from the middle, because the top layer can only influence 3 levels down. The front layer can only influence 3 levels up, but the middle layer has 7 degrees of influence. Mm-hmm. A truly mindful organization that is focused on its own sustainability will enable and create the psychological safety to lead from the middle. So leading from the middle is very critical. And each of us are leaders if we choose to be. We don't need permission to lead. And that is such an excellent point on which I am going to open this up for a conversation, short conversation, but nonetheless want to make sure that the audience have the opportunity to ask questions and engage, jump right in.
Definitely.
So Lisa, I know you're in the healthcare industry and the industry is facing so much challenges.
Yes, and when you spoke about the silos that often happen in business, that's a huge problem in healthcare as well, because you go to one specialist and they often don't look at the entire body as the system that it is. And so people end up wasting time and energy, money, everything going around to all these different areas. And if everybody worked together, and that's a big piece with the technology and things that are being worked on to be a change, is that you're only going to be successful if you work together. And I liked a lot of what you said. I think what was the quote? Be good, or you can be good by doing good, or I'm missing.
You can do well by doing good. You do well by doing good.
I wrote
so
that
you can be profitable. You can be. Sometimes organizations think, well, we have to think only about the bottom line. Well, by thinking about how can I do well, how can I be a force for good, that is going to positively impact the bottom line. It's been shown over and over and over and over again.
And that's just a good
do well by doing good.
Yeah. Yeah, I put that down. I had flipped the page in my planner, but I wrote that one down so that, because it's good to just keep your mind in that spot too, especially when people try to pull you different ways, that you just stay focused that you're gonna. It's better to do it that way versus other ways.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, especially when you're career transitioning and you're transitioning for a reason and you're transitioning in a way to change the paradigm.
Right.
And if you are able to talk about it in a positive way, people will come out of the woodwork to support you. And I know this from experience because I left corporate America just before the subprime crisis, purely on that ground, that I'm not, my whole premise always is I'm not going to come back as a rat because I'm a Hindu, right? We believe in reincarnation. I'm not going to come back as a rat because I helped you. And I'm comfortable telling this to the organizations I work with. And that was the circumstances under which I left corporate America to start my own consulting firm. But because people knew that I exited the industry in order to do good, I've never advertised for my business, but people have continuously come to seek my services because the way I do good in the community sells itself. And people forget that. We only advertise if we have to overcome negative word of mouth. If we create that positive word of mouth, then that by itself creates business and opportunities for us. So the question is, how do I get my message out? How do I get it amplified? And how do I get it in the hands and accessible to folks so that they know here is my purpose and here is who I am as a being, so that you open up the doors and windows to receive what's coming.
Yeah. Well, the right people find you too.
Mm-hmm.
Once that message does get out, for sure.
Thank you for that, Elisa. And Robin, thank you so much for making sure we are truly amplifying this message. Love how you do it. Mm-hmm. Christine, do you have any thoughts you want to share?
I told her she could keep her face off, so maybe she's
okay. No worries. No worries. She can unmute.
Well, you know, if she doesn't hop on, I'll just share a great example from their company. Okay. Is that when they have, so they are, they created the very first, in fact, it might still be the only USDA beef processing plant. Oh, I see you've unmuted, Christine. Do you want to hop on?
Go ahead, Christine.
My husband David and I are both on, but we're in our pajamas, so we're not.
No worries.
We're not going to show our faces. But we've been very impressed with what we've heard this morning, and I actually have bought your book and have bought your journal, and it is inspiring for sure. And we love working with Robin. She and I, of course, go back to our very beginnings, and we've always helped each other. She is an inspiration, 5 years younger than I am, always an inspiration to me. But business-wise, we have tried to implement the principles that she has talked about. And David, you can say something about the company if you want.
Sure. We have a company that makes beef products, and to Robin's point, we're able to get the first USDA plant in the state of Wyoming, and we distribute our products nationwide. But I think what we've really tried to do, and my background was with Chiquita Brands International and other large corporate companies prior to starting this. But I think what we've really tried to do is to help each person feel so important. Like when they leave the office, we employ over 20 people. We're not a huge company, but I try to tell people if I can, thank you so much what you did for us today. You made a difference for us. And I'm always telling them, I says, your position, whether you're working on our production line or whatever is, we're equal in importance. I really try to help people understand that, because I had some wonderful mentors and bosses, I guess you could call them, quote unquote, over the years at different companies since I got my MBA at USC and had the privilege of working for some major companies from Los Angeles to Boston. But anyway, some people that really, I think, employed these characteristics and these approaches in a way that were, I think, very meaningful. And I've tried to do it in our own business. And
tell about the Golden Rule with your first company.
Yeah, I think the first company I ever worked for out of Los Angeles was out of USC, was a company that one of their tenets for business was the golden rule is a good principle for living, treating others like you would be treated, but it's also a very solid and important principle for business. And so for my very first company that I worked for out of grad school, they instilled this, and I was so impressed with that, and it's what attracted me to that company. And I'm so grateful because I 7.5 years there that just really set the foundation for my entire career, and always appreciated that. So there are companies that strive to do this. We strive to do it in our setting, and I'm grateful to see all of what you've all presented, all the comments that have been made in terms of trying to get this more broadly across not only our country, but the world.
Yes. One thing we've done in our company, well, I should say, I started this part, was we have a monthly company lunch, and everybody eats in the same room, at the same tables. We celebrate birthdays, and we sing happy birthday to everyone. We tell them we love them, and we are a family, and we have great loyalty among our workers.
And we have some employees that have been with us for my manager has been with me for 11 years, and then we've had others that have been with us for 6, 7 years.
Beautiful.
And these are line workers that do fairly routine kinds of things, but we are always telling them how much we appreciate them. And we're in some major U.S. retail chains, 7-Eleven, Publix, and others across the country, and we're just grateful that we have people behind the products that we think are just amazing, and we do love them.
We have one worker who is really good. We really appreciate him, and he left. He was gone about 1.5 years. Then he came back, and when I saw him, I gave him a hug, and he said, "Well, I came back for the food."
And that's special, right? You truly are living the adage of doing well by doing good.
Yes.
And you're treating every one of them as an actual human being. And that's what everybody wants. So I love the fact that you shared this scenario. And you know what I want to do? I want to have both of you on another time to actually talk about how you built your business and how this works and how big corporations can take a page from you and replicate, because it's worth having this conversation at a deeper level. So thank you so much for sharing. And I cannot wait to figure out a way to get both of you on this program, because your story and the way you run your business, I honestly believe the world needs to see and hear. So thank you so much.
Well,
thank you.
It would be an honor. Be an honor to do that.
It would be.
We'd be happy.
Thank you. Thank you. So as we bring this to a close, Robin, what is the one piece of advice in 30 to 60 seconds that you want everybody to take away so that they can truly live an ethical life, a responsible, meaningful life, so that they and their organizations can be resilient?
Yeah. So I would call the heliotropic effect. And the heliotropic effect is the tendency of living organisms to gravitate toward light. You see this in plants will orient themselves toward the sun. Well, the same thing happens in human beings, that we are attracted to light, we're attracted to goodness, and we can be light to each other. We can be light within our little corner of the organization. Doesn't matter what your title is. You can be a source of light to that organization. And you can help your organization be more, as I could call it my tagline, be more humane, ethical, and resilient. And you can find more out about what I do at robinlearningsystems.com.
Thank you for sharing that, Robin. Yes. So go to robinlearningsystems.com. And those of you who saw the social media post, I have tagged her. So you should be able to find her social media handles on the program announcement itself. And thank you so much, Robin. It is always an honor and a personal pleasure to spend time with you, talk to you. And I love the fact that you support me, you make me better, and we collaborate and we build together. And to me, that is truly a lived experience of authentically being what we talk about.
Wonderful.
And I love your wisdom about let's spark each other, let's light each other, heliotropic effect. And I like us to remember that every human interaction is our opportunity for transformation. So take that opportunity, spark each other, let your light up the path for the others. And if you want to get additional insights and information from prior shows of how to get there, how to fine-tune your journey, go to Transform with Dr. Cass on YouTube, and you have access to all of our prior content. Subscribe and listen to them, watch them, and give us your feedback, because we want to craft and create these conversations in a meaningful way to make your journey purposeful, our shared journey magnificent. And as we go through life, and as we spark one another, and as we transform those around us, continue to embrace the fact that human interaction is an opportunity for transformation. But every one of those opportunities is also an opportunity to transform ourselves. Make sure you transform, you grow, you stay resilient, and you stay relevant so that you can live your purpose and we can benefit from your light.